Today's guest is a man whose voice and presence have filled theatres, film sets, and lecture halls for decades. David Dennis, a multi-award-winning actor, teacher, mentor, and formerly a dean of AFDA Johannesburg. He has shaped South African performance and communication for over 40 years.
Because you have a beautiful connection with people, and we are very blessed in that you and I have this performing arts background, but not everybody does. Now what?
Now, okay, that's a very interesting thing. Good storytellers, and again, I'm going back to my early childhood, when you listen to the older folk have conversation. I think we also have forgotten what it is simply to sit and talk, to sit and have a conversation, and to have that free exchange between people. And it happens within families. And of course, I'm also referring to having been raised by my grandfather, who visited a lot of his cousins and his brothers. So there was this generational thing that mattered enormously, to the point where if things were being discussed, perhaps that were a little bit more private, they would resort to using other languages to communicate in. Because we were raised, sort of English. Now they'd have to revert to something else. And in my case, because that's where I come from, and that's the languages that were spoken in many families, for the Transkei multilingual or bilingual. So there would be that revert to Xhosa when they wanted to say something, because many of the people living on trading stations and living in small towns are fully conversant in South Africa in different languages, including, specifically African languages, farming communities and so on, trading communities. So historically, we have this ability. And that conversation fascinated me. And memories and sharing laughter attached to memories, as well as pain and loss and sorrow. But memories always have that bittersweetness to them, because ultimately time must result in loss, will result in some sorrow, because we move on and we lose people, we gain others, and so on. And I think we lose that in the world that we are in today, that is so dominated by technology and various applications that have supplanted. And I don't use all the right lingo because I'm not tech savvy and I don't pretend to be. But the nature of conversation, we have lost the nature, the very essence of communication, of visiting, of caring with people.
Caring with people,
And that's where young people learn to express themselves, where it's this cross-generational, intergenerational thing, and young children learn to speak not from watching television cartoons, but listening to stories of older people and being fascinated by those kinds of stories. And mine included a lot of those kind of frontier kind of stories, and your great-grandfather on a trek somewhere with X amount oxen having to be inspanned and what have you, and camping under wagons, and all kinds of folklore that came into it as well. So that's what I think inspires. When you listen to people telling a good story, you're inspired by the story, you want to know more, and you remember things that amuse you, that intrigue you, and that just, click in your imagination.
Speaking to each other, literally sitting down and having a conversation with your family, with your friends. And I read a beautiful thing the other day. Yes,
taking the time to do so, because we're in such a fast-paced, rushed world. We don't give ourselves our brains, at the time, our minds to engage and to literally stop and invest in the moment.
That's very important. That's the thing. Speaking of which, when do you know in your everyday conversations, or especially, and I'm thinking at the university where you were speaking to so many colleagues, deans, students, whoever, when do you know that somebody's plugged into what you are saying? How do you know somebody hears you?
You know, it's the good old adage. Many people, I think, overthink the nature of speaking to a group of people. Now, I can't say that I was a natural public speaker. I think I became adept at speaking in public, but not necessarily a public speaker. And I think many people can get up and be public speakers, but the content of what they're saying may be completely absent, or there may be an absence entirely of any content. You know, a lot of people just get up and like the sound of their own voices.
Yeah.
It's about choosing your thoughts carefully. And this is not necessarily being scripted. It's what people call speaking from the heart.
Yes.
If you carry that within you, and you are clear in what message it is that you want to impart, and you have chosen a path of simplicity and economy of style with which to do so, it becomes so much more easier to get across a message in a few simple words. And when you do need to, and often I do resort to certain because I've got an arsenal of words, so to speak, you know, it's all sitting there, and I surprise myself sometimes. And I'm sure that I'm given, as many people, especially as you get older, to a little bit of malapropism where you kind of just, where the wrong word comes in, but hell, it sounds pretty similar and pretty convincing, but may not be what you think it is. And sometimes that's the slip of the tongue. But that's also a dead giveaway when you're not really engaged in the moment.
Yeah.
If you're engaged in the moment, and you are able to bring somebody into that moment, allow them the time to get in, and give them the space to listen to you.
Yeah.
And also, it's not about a torrent of words.
Yes.
It's about allowing an idea to land, a thought to land, to take root. It's also about inspiring an emotion in somebody, and allowing that to flourish within a person. And the more people become engaged or interested, it's not just flicking a switch or pressing a button. It's a process whereby they begin to listen in. And often a technique can be, you know where to place your voice as a trained artist or actor. We can engage the space. We can understand the space. And many people don't necessarily have that, but they just have the natural skill, the natural attributes of a good voice, a resonant, projected, a good timbre, well-pitched voice, who understand how to use their voices without too much difficulty, and they are blessed.
Yes.
Wonderful for them.
Yes.
The rest of us have to learn how to do that.
But that's the beautiful thing. It can be learned.
Yeah.
You can learn. And it's really about a willingness to say to yourself, all right, I think I can do better. Let me go and find somebody who can help me, a coach or a trainer or whatever. Because the voice, it's so much more than just the voice, because the voice is such an emotional thing.
Yes.
It's yes. So that takes me back to what you said at the beginning, where it comes from the heart. If you speak your truth, your voice is more inclined to follow.
And that connection will happen automatically.
Yeah.
And it just needs a few, you know, and again, one can also almost self-train oneself. And, you know, the one thing I must remember now at this moment is my voice teacher, many years ago when I was at UCT, said to me, the strangest thing about you, David, is that when you sing, you have a resonance that is quite brilliant. But when you speak, it's flat, it's in the mouth. You have absolutely, and really that was about learning to breathe. That was really just about stop speaking from the mouth or from the throat and open this up.
Yes.
And this entire, the scope and scale of what you're able to achieve, once you've understood what it is, actually, the breath is the fuel to that sound. It's what feeds. It's going to give you the energy, and the breath is obviously going to, you know, feed into your blood system, your brain, everything in your being. It relies on that breath mechanism and how you employ it. You touch on a very important thing. Emotionalism links us immediately there. But what we then have to acquire the skill for is managing that.
Yes.
Managing it, understanding what your capacity is once you've, and going the emotional route is a very good place. if you've ever been emotional and you know what it is to get to that place of angst or anguish, where you can't help but vent, you feel a very different kind of energy and use of organs and how these things all work together. And we go back into an animal kind of context. You know, when an animal is fearful, or when it has, it's sounding a warning, that comes from every fiber of its being.
Yes.
Whether it is a roar or whatever it is,
Yes.
you know, it's unbridled. It's not examining and going through all manner of things in order to understand what it's doing. It's a primal thing. It comes
And
from within.
allowing it to come out, and not thinking, what are they going to think of me? How is that person going to react? But really just allowing, because it is your truth in that moment.
And that's the trigger that I got, and I had to work out in terms of, okay, now I'm having to use the breath in a particular way in order to get that sound out for singing, and particularly within the classical singing context. And it was always to bring it into the mask of the face, and, you know, these resonators having the forehead and the nose. And I have a peculiarly shaped hard palate, because it literally is in a U shape like that. So basically what one of my doctors said to me is that you've got a hole in the head. All of this is just a big resonator. You haven't got your sinal cavity is such an enormous hole in your head. That is what constitutes the resonance there. But again, it's about harnessing all that energy, understanding what it actually means, and how to translate that, modulate it, manage it, moderate it, however, whatever terminology you wish to use to develop it, and then ultimately to deliver it, and then understanding where it sits in the space.
And you know, now that you're saying all of that, it is so well stated. People who are not performers, which is the majority of people listening to us and watching us, can learn from this, in that it can be taken charge of. You can take control of how you sound. You can manage it. You're not just a loose cannon, and you don't have to let God's water oor God's akker, you know. You can really help yourself to articulate better, to express yourself better. And it's up to you. It's your responsibility to, if you want to communicate better, to connect better, to start at a good place to start.
And just getting to your point about connection, while we are, you know, the other thing about connecting is not just the natural quality of the voice, or being able to be heard at the back of the room, or having a deeply resonant voice, you know, all of that kind of thing is nothing without actually making the contact. When you stand up in front, whether it is to one person or to 1,000 people, and I've been very fortunate to have, you know, to have played to upwards of a couple of thousand people at any given time, and in the open air as well. For example, playing Shakespeare in the open air. It's the time to make contact with every individual that sits in that space, and to make that one audience, one being with whom you communicate.
Oh, yes.
Rather than having to, you know, you're taking everybody in and trying to split your energy 1,000 ways. Take that, and it's almost like a camera notion of focusing and zooming it all into one place. And it's almost the reverse of what I used to say. What is the difference between the mediums or media, stage acting or cinema or screen acting, where you have to project out to the audience, and in your mind make them zoom in as one, as a camera. You treat that audience as one single close up that you are playing to. And that's just a matter of scale at the end of the day. And similarly, when you are in front of the camera, you're performing to many millions of people, you know, who may at some point or another be viewing that spectacle. But it's almost the reverse or the converse of the other process.
That's it.
And that's really what the scalability is to take it to that place which is going to translate into many hearts, into many minds, in either of the mediums.
That's it.
And really, and it's not about the shouting or the whispering that makes the difference in scale. The intensity remains the same.
That's it. That's it. And
The interiority remains
yes,
the same.
the purpose and intent, the
Yeah.
outflow of, and the want, the willingness, the willingness of heart, the willingness
Yeah.
of spirit to want to connect. And that's very
And could just,
important.
sorry to interrupt
Yes,
you there again. Something that I learned greatly, and often the thing is once that you have learned all these techniques or you've understood in some measure. Now, remember, you and I will never be exposed to each other's performance. I mean, I can watch you and you could watch me, which indeed we have had,
yes.
the pleasure of doing. I hope it is mutual. However, I will never
Absolutely.
experience me and you can never experience you,
Yes,
especially within a live context.
yes.
And I've never understood what that power is. So when people say, how do you do that? And I've had international producers say to me, for example, I did Priscilla a couple of years ago, and one of the international producers said, you walk onto that stage, there's 90 people, flitting across the stage in all manner of sequins and feathers and high heels and garish makeup and the likes. But you are able to just stand there still and have an entire audience of 1,500 people just focus on the palm of your hand, or just wait, as that old saying of hanging on one's lips. And that's really just harnessing the energy in the space.
Yes.
And ultimately, I think that is what presence is knowing your space and knowing how to gauge that space and where you place yourself in that space. And if it goes back, and you mentioned something in a conversation we had earlier by email, the stillness.
Yes.
And the silence. That's what we fear. Conquering stillness and conquering silence.
Mm.
Once you're able to do that,
Yes.
then you can do anything with that stillness and silence.
That's
in
right.
the same token, or by the same token, I could never possibly play a tragedy. And I played King Lear at the age of 46 without understanding the humor, the absurdity. That you laugh in that embarrassed, nervous way.
Yes.
But yet it's funny. It's
Yes.
funny. And that's what makes you laugh. It's not so much anxiety.
Yes.
But because you've taken it that little step, perhaps almost too far, I don't know. That where, in the case of Lear, he's going mad.
Yes.
The imagination can do almost, anything with that madness. The perceived madness, what is it? How do you play madness, for
Yes.
example?
Yes.
And I used a lot of that technique as well to be able to understand what the madness was, to find the humor in his almost moving to an infantile second childhoodness, that gave me the freedom to play with my imagination with what madness could possibly be.
Yes.
But then the pathos, when he ultimately says in the most simple and at the most majestic moment in the play, when he considers King Lear, that is, the poor naked wretches wheresoe'er thou art, that bide the pelting of this pitiless storm, how shall your houseless heads and unfed sides, your looped and windowed raggedness defend you from seasons such as these? And he considers the poor naked wretches, who like himself is now just a homeless man without a roof over his head on the blasted heath. And then you can achieve that pathos. And that beautiful, simple line that he says to the fool, I pray, fool, do not let me go mad.
And you
And
know what
then
I'm
you capture-
seeing and I'm hearing now? Everything is preceded by honesty. The more honest you go into a conversation, whether it be on stage or whether it be in real life or whether it be a meeting at work, if your words are preceded by honesty, and of course a very clear idea of what you're bringing to the conversation and what you want out of the conversation,
Yeah.
because that's also what I'm hearing here. You know exactly where it's going,
Yeah.
and you know exactly
And
what you need from this. Very
that separates
important.
the actor and the person who is speaking on a stage, who is addressing people, or is addressing a small room of people, or is on a one-to-one conversation. The actor has to prepare themselves in terms of process and applies their techniques that they have accumulated and they've learned over time. I was accused many, many times, especially as a younger actor, of being far too technical, therefore devoid of emotion. I was approaching everything too technically. However, when push came to shove, and it got to that point where the rehearsal now ends, the performance takes over.
Yes.
That's when my truth actually kicked in.
Yes.
All of that space up to the rehearsal point, and of course until those final days before your opening night. And the most important night for me was not the opening, but the second night.
Yes.
When everything deserts you and you are left but despair.
Yes.
Because now it's the glamour of the opening night, and the all of that has happened, and now you have to face the long journey on a stage in a play for the next 3 weeks or 3 months, with very few audiences,
Night after night after night,
and you have to find that every night and find that freshness. But it matters to me that whether there are 1 or 100 people, that the experience is the same. So to deal with technicalities, everything had to be shipshape up to a certain point.
Yeah.
And when that ship sets sail, it must be watertight.
Yes.
Then I'm allowed that space to be truthful and to soar, as I always used to say. From the page to the stage is one step.
Yeah.
But from the stage into the ether is the hardest part.
Yes.
And we have to first get off that page. But you have to study that page. You have to know exactly every twist and turn that's going to allow you to get onto the stage. But once you are there, the trust in your own work that you have done is what is going to carry you. That is what is going to allow one to soar. And that's speaking to actors.
The research, the effort, the energy that you put into this thing, this conversation, this connection, this meeting, this whatever it is, then as long as you've done your homework, so to speak, then only can you fly.
Yeah,
people can't just rock up.
That's not just an actor's. It applies if you in a teaching capacity, and in that your function, or just in a masterclass, in a workshop situation, in a coaching situation, wherever it is, you're speaking from that place of truth, from the place of experience, and it's knowledge and information packaged in a way that makes it digestible, accessible. And people go on that journey with you. They begin, and anecdote is such a wonderful way of getting around things as well, because it allows one to become much more personable. You allow people into that shell. That's one thing that I've always, I can't say that I've really had a battle with it, because I've been complimented and on many occasions for the humility and the warmth with which I approach things. If people ask me for help, I don't ignore, I don't push it aside and say, oh, I'm busy now, etc. I will take the time to at least listen.
I can definitely attest to that. Yeah. You as a person off stage, with all the interactions I've seen you have and that I've had with you, you stop whatever it is, you lock in, and then we talk. And that is greatly appreciated. Yeah. Why is that? Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
And even though it may seem that you are not, that it may seem that you aren't listening, I have had many conversations, especially within the work environment, and in an environment where people largely are really only preparing to say what it is that they are planning to say.
Yes.
They're not listening to what is being said. They're not part of any thread of dialogue or conversation or discourse. They're only, sticking the hand up or waving in order to get attention, in order to be heard, but not necessarily to say anything. And also particularly because they haven't listened to anything that has been said.
Yes. And cannot meaningfully reply. It's like what you say, I'm coming into this conversation with this one thought, and I want you to hear me on this, and then give me preferably the answer I'm looking for, not leaving space for anything else.
Yeah. You know, one of the other questions that I think that I've always been afraid of was to say, please, would you kindly repeat that? Or I didn't quite understand what you meant. I think often we're too afraid, particularly within certain kinds of circles where, you know, I was never the most confident person in the room as a young man. I, you know, probably fairly unprepossessing, didn't really make much of an impression. My grandfather used to say to me, boy, stop mumbling, you know, and that was the one thing that, you know, that was the, I suppose, in a way, from the old people, and certainly from my grandfather, who wasn't a loudmouth, but you had to be articulate. You had to express yourself clearly and economically.
Yes, economically.
Say what it is that's on your mind. And be respectful about it as well, you know, respect who you are speaking to and what they may be hearing and how you express yourself. So there are many things that, but again, these are skills and techniques that you develop growing up. And I really place it firmly at the root of that generational mix of understanding what the old world was like and where it has brought me to. And we were all once young. So, you know,
yes,
I don't know which millennials or Y or Z or X or P or what generation we're in now. I think that's all gone beyond me. I'm just old. I don't much care because I don't have to apologize to anybody anymore for anything I do or
Isn't
say.
it lovely?
Or more pertinently, I don't have to ask permission to express myself.
Yes.
And it's that self-censorship too. But I think having grown up in the way that I was trained by that stop mumbling boy, you know, speak your mind or say what you have to say, is that I became discerning.
Yes.
I didn't open my mouth unless I had something to say.
Yes.
And that it was important enough for me to say it.
And
then the words will follow.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is
the words will follow. You will find the words.
Yeah.
And it's that speaking one's truth. It's being honest in your response. The moment one starts fabricating things, you lose the language, you lose the words fail you. And then it just becomes a stupefying, act of umming and ahhing and what have you.
Yes.
I mean, the one thing that I cannot bear, and I really hope that people will tell me this, is, and I have heard, and it's terrible when I hear myself, because then I'm distracted by the thought that I'm trying to find. When it translates as an and it's, I'm afraid that's my weakness. It is a pet peeve.
Yes. What can people do to prevent that?
Stop, breathe, and think.
Yeah. Thank you kindly. Yeah.
Just stop for a moment. Gather your thought.
Yes.
And as a performer, those of us who are trained it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be an actor to do this.
No.
Some people just have the natural ease and comfort within themselves to stop, find themselves.
And then go in.
And if you've, made a mistake with something or the other, it humanizes you to acknowledge that.
Absolutely. People think they have to be perfect when they say they say in a meeting or when they're having a call, and you don't have to be perfect. Nobody is perfect in how they speak. But take that moment, gather yourselves, and then speak. People often don't want to pause because they think it's going to be too long and people will lose interest. But quite the opposite happens. If you don't pause and you and then people lose interest.
Stillness and silence. We're so afraid of those two things that we've always got to ask for people to be silent.
Strange.
Why is that?
That's a very good point now that you mention it.
We are desperately afraid of just being still, of just being
Yes.
silent. We're too afraid to hear or to listen to our thoughts.
Afraid of
And
what
to
we're going to find.
and listen to what the other person is saying. Don't spend the time with your eyes locked on somebody and your brain is simply engaged in trying to work out what it is that you're going to respond without having distilled what they have said or made in any way, shape, or form a connection to that point that you can either agree with or disagree with.
Yes.
But do so thoughtfully. If you're
Thoughtfully.
disagreeing, not for the sake of disagreement, for the sake of argument, or for the sake of debate, and far too often that happens, I'm afraid. And it's I suppose, the need to impress your audience with how erudite one might be. Whereas let the erudition, if there is any, if it does exist within you, let that light shine, to use
Yes.
a
Yes.
well-traveled phrase.
It's your light. It has a right to shine.
David reminded us that confidence doesn't have to shout. It can whisper, it can pause, and it can reach straight into the heart. Thank you, David, for reminding us what true connection sounds like. Until next time, take care. Tot volgende keer. Mooi bly.